Thank you for that very, very kind and not recognizable introduction. It's good to be here, and I've written down, I don't know if these are 10 tips, but maybe 10 thoughts. And if they're helpful to you, that's great, and if they're not, you can discard them. The way I look at the world, or the way I've come to look at the world, is that there are three drivers of human behavior and motivation. One is meaning. Man, woman is a species in search of meaning. Two is belonging. We crave to belong. And three, we like to earn. And earn is work, broadly defined. So on meaning, there are 3 points I want to make. I live my life, rightly or wrongly, better or poorly, with some sense of purpose and commandment. And I think that orients me. And I would guard against the excessive of looking in. We live in a very self-centered, inward-looking, psychologically obsessed society. And I'd like to draw the distinction between happiness, which is really doing for others, or for something greater than oneself, than pleasure. Happiness is giving, pleasure is taking. And we live in a world, if you just look at the ads on a bus, which are focused on pleasure, and I would argue for happiness. I think it's more sustainable. So that's my first comment, which is a life of commitment and a sense of mitzvah, however you define it. Inequality is the issue of the day. You have a good education, you can get a good job, you can perform. If you don't, the squeezed middle is sliding back. You can't go to the automobile factory and get a job at 18 quid an hour because it's in China. And I feel that the Jewish community has turned very inward and has lost its sense of tikkun olam to the wider world. And the world is poor for lacking the Jewish voice in social action. And we're poor for being insular. So in your lives, we have to take care of the Jewish community first. We got to look at Shalom of Tzfah, the social capital, and I'm going to use that metaphor that the Jewish world has, is priceless. Belonging. You're here. You want to identify. You want to connect. I don't know if you're single. I don't know if you're married. I'm sure you all want to be married. I would encourage you to that outward lookingness as opposed to that inward lookingness helps in a relationship. It's a long distance run. The romance is great. Marital counselors will tell you it lasts for 3 years, and then it has to graduate to mature adult love. So choose a mate, not simply for the momentary pleasure, but for the peaks and valleys of life, because they will come. As Muhammad Ali said, I never got knocked down by the punch I saw coming. Life will throw you punches, and you need somebody by your side to help cushion the blow. Belong to a community. Lo tov la'adam levado. That applies to marriage, and it applies, we are a social animal. Happiness is with others. And one thing I would say that in life, if you want to be an agent of change, the individual is nothing. This is something I've learned from friends of mine in the community action world. If you want to make a change, you have to be part of an organization. It's if you want to fight the bad forces in the world, you have to be linked up with people, because the individual writing a letter to the Times isn't going to get it done. Earning, okay. Because I think everybody wants to know how they can have a successful career or not. Follow your interests. My CEO, who's a very successful money manager, I had dinner with him last night. He was in from LA, and his son has just started on Wall Street. And in a tremendous moment of maturity, this man said to his son, if you do what I'm passionate about, you'll have a lifetime of misery. If you do what you're passionate about, you'll have a lifetime of fulfillment. So don't be a lawyer because your dad said be a lawyer. Be a lawyer if you like the law. So go with what your passions, tempered by the reality, as I tell my daughter, that most people in theater starve. So yeah, I have to tell her the world as it is without crushing her passions. Second, very difficult. She says, my daughter's off to university, she says, well, I like museum curation, and I like being an academic, and I like the arts. And her mother says, grab your passions, and I say, marry rich. And that's parenthood, right? One eye on the child and one eye on the world that's out there. We'll see how it plays out. Look, I think in general in life, and this is not my own, but something that I read which discussed character said that there are 3 key traits you want a young child to have. Self-regulation, right? The ability to control not just one's bodily functions when you're 2, but one's emotions when you're 22. Self-regulation, self-application, going the extra mile, and empathy. Empathy. What's it like to be in your shoes, Yossi? That is a great human character trait, and that will carry one far in life. So if you can control your emotions, if you can work hard, I'm not saying bury your emotion, I'm saying control, and if you can have empathy for your coworker, your client, put yourself in the other person's shoes, you're off. That's it. The hours you spend with your children when they're young will save you days, weeks, and months later. Make time for your partner. Make time. I see people on the Heath Sunday morning, husband and wife team, it's their weekly ritual. It's really important. Make time for your kids. And remember, make one-on-one time with your kids too. What you experience as quality time with them all together isn't what they experience. And it's tough. But if you don't have the home, you're as happy as your unhappiest child, my mother always said. So get the kids happy. But that doesn't mean you can't begin, you have to be the judge of what your bandwidth is. And you have to be happy. And if you feel life has gotten a bit too domestic, and you're a bit, grounded, then you've got to go out and make your life interesting. And definitely you want to spread your wings, but just always remember what the priorities are. No, I don't think that it's a ladder where you can't go up a certain rung unless you've had a foot on the other one. I think you're the best judge of that. But I would say where we have the most impact and ultimately the most fulfillment is in what's very not abstract, but what's very near and particular to us. In a career choice, play the long game. There is no get-rich-quick scheme. And if there is, it's 1 in a million, and I bet you're not one of those 1 in a million. The guy, Steve Jobs, is 1 in a billion. It's the wrong role model. It's the people who build businesses over time, day in and day out. Be the best. Be the best. Be the best you can be. There is no shortcut. And go the extra distance. In business, in any profession, in today's competitive, just always push yourself to be the best. And just figure out a way that people know that. Can I help you? Go that extra distance. Can I drop that off for you on the way home? Just whether it's a client, whether it's a partner. That's what stays in people's mind, is that little signal that you send, that you have the spark and you have the inspiration and that you care and that you're not the first one out at 5. My observations of the world is globalization globalization and technology. I showed up at college in 1986 with an IBM Electric. I left with an Apple Mac. And now it's all done on an iPhone. So the pace of change is huge, and you have to keep up with it with not being overwhelmed with it. That's something else I should say. You have to know your appetite for risk. Startups, most of them fail. I'm not telling you anything you don't know. From my observation, the Ubers of the world, right? The disruptors of existing technology have a very profound impact. I would want to measure is the market big enough? Is there so much mortgage brokerage that if you cut that out, you have a big enough market to execute against? Always have the numbers to back up your hunch, because you may do your sums and say this is not really scalable. And I think in many instances scale matters. I'm a fanatic about to-do lists. I sort of really start the day with a to-do list. Try to get my orientation. and I try to check through it. Now, we could spend hours on how you construct a to-do list, right? Sometimes I say, all right, what's hot? What do I need to attend? What am I passionate about? Book theater ticket, that's number one. Or go to Arsenal game with son. Put that down, right? And then the important distinction is what's urgent and what's important, right? I got to return that phone call because it's not really important. What's important is that meeting. I got to make, so you have to get the balance right. And you have to get rid of time wasters. There are lots of people who want a cup of coffee. I don't have time for the cup of coffee. And you have to say no to people. Saying no is as important as what you put on. So I just get good at it, and I have a team. At work, I've got good people, and it's about knowing where I have to be. And at UJIA, there's a great professional team. So you could write a book about that, but I would say be organized. I would say understand your priorities. Keep checking the to-do list during the day. Break up the day in slots. Don't take on too much, but push yourself. And small changes make a little difference. An extra half hour in the morning, an extra half, don't watch a reality TV show. Actually answer that email. Answer emails in 48 hours, that type of stuff. But keep operating it. Teamwork is vital. And it's at the end of the year when you sit down and do the reviews with people and the promotions, who's a team player, who's a culture builder, and who's not. Well, it doesn't matter if they're junior or senior. You need some evidence of past performance in some endeavor which shows accomplishment and excellence. What made them special? Where did they excel? Where did they push the boat out? If it's a mid-level or a high-level lateral, it's past performance is a good predictor of future success. It's the interpersonal it's the interaction in the interview, right? Are they engaged? Are they making eye contact? Are they carrying the conversation forward? Do they have that? Do you want to work with them? You want to be in a conference room at 8 at night with them? And do you think that they have the same culture as the firm? But I think, and Deborah can speak to that, the times where I have taken risk on people and say, I know they don't know anything about this business, but I think they have a spark, hasn't worked. It hasn't worked. It's what have they done and can they do it here? That's experience. I wish it were otherwise. I really wish it were otherwise. You have to get as much, in life, do due diligence. Meet the mother. Because that is your future. Check the teeth, meet the mother. Okay? You got to do due diligence. You've got to meet, if you're changing fields, if you want to go into Deborah's field, which is executive recruiting, I would meet 4 or 5, 6, 7 executive recruiters. What's it like? What do you like in your job? What don't you like in your job? Get into their shoes. Get them to talk openly. But don't jump until you feel you know as much as you can without actually doing it. But also ask yourself, what is it about what you're doing now that you don't like? And is the problem in that job? Or are your expectations off? Do you have an idealized view of what work is? Do you have a romanticized view? Are you being impatient? Have you made a mistake and you're covering up? Be brutally honest. What are you leaving and why? Now, if you're in a bad job and you're unhappy and you're ill-suited for it, go. But ask the hard questions. I have to quote Rabbi Abraham Levy, who was the outgoing head of the Spanish and Portuguese community, who said the definition of a good Jew is someone who wants to be a better Jew. So, to me, it's not the end point, but it's the steps that we take every day to be better Jews. So what I would like the young people of Britain to feel is that, they are the possessors of a very rich, I think unequaled way of life.